Hi everyone and welcome to the Inclusive Teacher Co podcast. My name's Steph Beatty, ex-English teacher turned neurodiversity specialist. I am an entrepreneur and I have ADHD. I work with parents and educators across the globe, quite literally, to help improve life outcomes for children and young people through practical, inclusive strategies that actually work and learning that actually fits their brain. So today we're going to talk about why your child probably doesn't hate reading. They just hate what reading feels like. So if reading at home feels like a daily fight, or it starts off fine, then suddenly becomes tears, anger, silly behavior, shutting down, or that line, I hate reading. I want you to hear this straight away. Remember, they probably don't hate reading. They just hate what it feels like. And that is actually a completely different problem to solve, guys. Because if we treat this as a behavior issue, and I have to say, guys, I really don't like the word behavioral or the phrase behavioral issues. Okay, but if we treat it as a problem with behavior, we reach for pressure, consequences, lectures, comparisons, or the just try harder narrative. And most parents I've worked with and even teachers have tried some version of that. It doesn't work for long and it usually makes reading feel all the more risky for that child. But if we treat it as an experience issue, we can change the experience, we can lower the friction, we can protect their confidence, and we can build the skill over time. Again, massive welcome, and I really hope that you get some value out of this today. And please do feel free to share it with somebody who you feel might benefit from this, whether it is your colleague, your friend, a sibling, whoever. I want to make sure that I'm bridging the research between classroom practice and family life so that we can support these children without turning homes into a second school and without paying tutors hundreds of pounds. So if you're listening and you're thinking, yeah, this is my house every night, you're in the right place. If you want practical strategies that fit real family life, please do subscribe to this podcast as well. It will make all the difference, and I promise I will do my best to deliver the content that you want. In fact, please do message in. You can email us info@inclusiveteacherco.com, or you can find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can find me as Stephanie Beatty on LinkedIn. And if there's anything that you want us to cover, then please feel free. We want this podcast to be for you. It's my passion project. I don't get paid for this. That's just not the point at all. It's just to make sure that we're helping parents and we're helping educators to improve the life chances of these children. So new episodes are always designed to be clear, realistic, emotionally safe for you and for the children that you are parenting or that you teach. So in this episode, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to, first of all, explain why reading can feel so hard for an ADHD brain, even when you have a very, very bright child. I'm going to name that emotional layer that families find so tricky, okay, and that families miss, especially around shame and rejection sensitivity. And I'm going to give you a simple plan that you can implement today, so you can try tonight. So let's start with a reframe. Number one, they hate reading. That's often code for reading hurts. So when parents say they hate reading, what they often mean is the children are avoiding it. They melt down. They resist starting. They argue about every word. They rush it. They skim. They guess or refuse. They look fine at school. They melt apart at home. And this isn't a child who hates learning. This is a child whose nervous system over time has learned that reading equals danger. Not obviously physical danger, but this emotional danger, because reading involves them being corrected all the time, being stuck whilst other people are watching, making visible mistakes, feeling slower than their peers, feeling stupid even when they are absolutely not, and feeling trapped in a task that is quite hard for them to escape. So when your child is saying, I hate reading, they're saying, I feel exposed, I feel behind, I'm feeling trapped, I feel like I'm in a shame spiral, and I hate the way my brain feels when I try. But then you add ADHD into the mix. So why is reading harder if they have ADHD? Well, if they are not avid readers, if they are not hyper-focused on reading, which a lot of ADHD students can be, they can absolutely adore reading. But if they don't, it can feel harder because reading is actually a very high demand task. And we forget that as adults, because as adults, a lot of us have just been reading our whole lives, we forget. In fact, we don't even remember, probably half of us, how we acquired the reading skills that we have. But reading asks your child to use attention. It asks them to use their working memory and emotional regulation at the same time. So even for adults, that can be a lot. But if we break it down, let's just think about them step by step. We've got attention. I say this all the time. The fact that it's called an attention deficit is a complete myth, okay? ADHD attention is variable and it is very much linked to interest and novelty. So if what they're reading is not engaging, having to sustain that tension can feel physically uncomfortable. So of course their mind is going to drift. So I have parents say, well, they can focus on, I don't know, Fortnite or Minecraft for hours. Why can't they look at a page? But the answer is that the brain, it's not choosing to be difficult. It's responding to how the task feels to them. Then we have the working memory load. So working memory, I always say, is this little sticky notepad in your brain. Reading is asking that child to hold on to what they read whilst they're trying to decode the next bit. So decoding is sort of making sense of the words in the sentence. So they're having to hold on to what they're reading whilst trying to understand it. And when working memory is under strain, that comprehension level is going to drop. When it drops and we're asking them to continue to focus, that frustration is going to rise. And either the child gives up or they get reactive. And of course, we've got delayed reward, motivation and delayed reward, okay? Reading has a very slow payoff, especially if that child is in this repeated struggle. So motivation's going to drop sharply when effort feels high and that reward is delayed. So for many kids with ADHD, reading isn't like a neutral task for them. It's a task with a long history of, this is really hard, I'm not really good at it. And then when we think about ADHD and dopaminergic dysregulation, and I talk a lot about this in my trainings, I do a lot of trainings for teachers, and I talk about movement. Movement amplifies or stimulates, dopamine in the brain. So many children regulate attention through movement and through sensory input. Sitting still adds a load. This is why you can have a child who could read better when they're rocking or on a wobble cushion or a wobble stool, holding a fidget, for example. So when reading is set up as sit still, be quiet, do it properly, do it now, you've made the challenge even harder for them. They're trying to read and stay regulated. So reading time, it's not a literacy activity, it's a nervous system event. And that's what brings us to the emotional piece. Reading can sometimes very much feel like rejection. So again, a lot of parents describe reading to me as, it's like they think I'm attacking them. It's like one correction and they explode, or they would rather fail than try. Now remember, they're not lazy either. That's something important to note. We shouldn't be labeling that at any time in our conversations. It's not a lazy thing. But this is where the concept of RSD comes up. And I do talk about this in the ADHD Reading at Home program for parents in more detail. But rejection sensitive dysphoria, it's not a formal diagnosis as such, but it's used to describe this intense emotional pain after a very real or even a perceived criticism, after a perceived failure, or after some sort of rejection, even if the feedback you give them is constructive and we say, listen, it's okay to get things wrong. They can still feel like they're failing and they've done something wrong, and it is very, very real. And remember, their perception is real to them. It's valid. And their response might feel somewhat out of proportion to you, but it is neurological. And reading is a common trigger for rejection because it involves that performance, correction, visible mistakes, sometimes comparison. So they might hear you say, let's sound that out as I'm failing, or try again, I'm being disappointing. You know this word, why don't I know this word? Even when you're being calm. And again, this reaction that they have might look out of proportion, but it's neurological and it's very, very real in their body. And this is why I teach the shift from prove you can read to let's read together safely. Because if you protect that emotional safety, you protect access to that text. So what to do differently? So I do like to keep these pods as practical as I can. What can we do differently? So starting today or tonight or even tomorrow, I'll give you a simple approach. So not a perfect routine, not a complete overhaul, just a safe reset. And of course, if you want more training, you will be able to access the ADHD Reading at Home program, lifetime access. Step 1, change the goal quietly in your head. So the goal isn't to finish the pages. The goal is to protect confidence while still building the skills. If the reading ends with shame, then of course they're going to avoid it the next day. You would as well. But if it ends with safety, it's going to become possible to practice again. Now, practice never makes perfect. I hate that phrase, practice makes perfect. Practice makes progress. All right. So step 1, change the goal in your head. Step 2, use one protective rule. Okay, so no surprise performance. So don't spring it on them to read out loud. So ask them. Okay, keep it emotionally safe. Ask, would you like to take turns? So if they panic when they're being asked to read out loud and we're springing it on them, why would we do that? So you can do shared reading. You can have an audio plus the text. If they're following things along, they can follow captions. You can read, they can track with a finger. All of that still counts. Step 3, make it smaller than you think you need. We don't need to be developing massive bookworms who sit there reading for hours and hours on end. You can set a 5-minute timer or a 10-minute timer. Choose a small target. 1 page, 1 paragraph, 10 lines. And you can say, we are going to stop when this timer ends. And it's not about, I had a parent once saying, well, aren't I just lowering my standards? Like, no, absolutely not. Okay, this is better than nothing. By keeping it small, we're not lowering our standards, we're just adjusting. We're matching them where they are. Small is removing threat because we don't want their nervous system in an explosive mode. Okay. Step 4, give them 2 choices. Okay, reduce that demand, increase that buy-in. This is all one big marketing task, I think. It's just getting them to buy in. So do you want the comic or do you want the football page? Okay, it's more effective than let's read a page of a book. Or do you want to read the book today or do you want to read the comic strip? Give them a choice. ADHD is, yes, we need structure, but we also like autonomy and freedom. And step 5, connection before correction, always. So if they get stuck, we don't want to be testing them. That's not our job. A practical rule I teach a lot is the 5-second rule. So if they're stuck on a word, if it's sticking for about 5 seconds, just say it yourself and keep the flow going. Protect the flow all the time. Okay, we don't need to be battling over a word. You can still build those decoding skills, but we want to turn reading into a confidence exercise, not a humiliation exercise. So if they get stuck on the word for more than 5 seconds, say the word and move on. At the end, you can always go back to it and say, do you know what this means? Let's talk about it. And lastly, step 6, use a reset script in that moment. So if things are starting to escalate, you need something to say, and you can adjust this based on, how you normally speak, but you need a script that's going to keep you steady if things start to escalate. Okay, so pause, lower your voice, slow down, stop the task. Okay. Secondly, validate. That felt hard. It's fine. You're doing really well. You're safe here. And thirdly, reduce the demand. So you read, they follow, all right? Or you stop and you go back to it later. So you can always say, listen, let's make this smaller, but let's keep going. Okay, so fix it in that moment. So pause, validate, and reduce the demand. So if you're listening and thinking, my child is in secondary school, the texts are harder, the consequences are bigger, I haven't got time for this. Listen, I get it. Okay, but here's what I know from being in classrooms for over 13 years. And even longer, actually, since I've been doing neurodiversity training. Reading is access. It is not just an English subject thing, okay? If they feel unsafe reading, they are going to avoid the very practice that makes their lives easier across the entire curriculum. So the priority is never pressure, it's routine, okay? Safe routine or a safe route back in. All right, so let's think about the key takeaways and what you can implement today. So number 1, when they say, I hate reading, you're listening for how reading makes them feel. They hate how it makes them feel. 2, for ADHD kids, it can be harder because remember, it loads attention, working memory, emotional regulation all at once. It's not laziness, it's a lot. Okay, there's a lot to process. 3, if reading triggers shame or rejection sensitivity, any correction, remember connection before correction, any correction is going to feel like rejection and the reaction might look huge. So we protect emotional safety first. Okay. So today, what you can implement, just choose one thing actually today. Do you want to do a timer, 10-minute timer and stop when it ends? Do you want to give them 2 text choices? Do you want to use the 5-second rule when they get stuck just to keep the flow going? Or do you want to use the reset script, pause, validate, reduce demand. Just pick one. You don't have to try and be perfect at this, guys. Remember, practice makes progress for you as well. You're not born knowing how to do this with your eyes shut. Okay, brains are basically plastic and habits can compound, all right, but only if the experience is suitable. I'm going to stop there. If this episode helped, please subscribe so you automatically get notice of the next one. And if you want deeper support, you can check out the links between the show notes for resources, access to the newsletter. I send a newsletter out every other week for parents and educators. And of course, if you want to hear more about what you need help with, let us know. We're not a team. Well, it's my company. It's mostly me. But we're not a team of robots. We're not a team of people who don't answer messages. We don't have some automated AI bot answering things for us like a lot of companies do. So please email us in. What do you need help with? You know our expertise are with reading and ADHD and classroom strategy, home strategy, emotional regulation, but there's a lot more that we can talk about. It doesn't have to just be about reading. We are experts in our field, so please do, message us and tell us what you want. So I've been Steph Beatty for the Inclusive Teacher Co. You're not failing, guys. You're parenting a child whose brain needs a different route. So let's work together. Let's make reading feel safer and let's build the skills to improve their life chances. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.